Apparently not everyone was aware of the incessant march of progress. The next improvement should be more to your liking. I understand that scientists will soon make it possible for any object thrown at the television screen to actually hit the performer. All of which reminds me of a story.
Welcome to the Shamley Silhouette, yet another analysis of the master of suspense, Alfred Hitchcock. I am your host, Zach Eastman, and we're going to jump right into today's episode. We have a really special story for you. We have a story of blackmail, of murder, and we can't just tell it in normal dimensions. You can't just look at this in two dimensions. You have to go into a third dimension in order to properly tell the story that we are going to talk about, which is, of course, Alfred Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder, the only 3D film that the Master of Suspense ever did for Warner Brothers in 1954. It is a film that came at the tail end of the 3D craze in the 50s, and so as a result was mostly seen in its 2D form when it was first released. However, through a release in the 80s, more people got to see the 3D effect and how powerful it could be. And thanks to the tech boom that 3D had, thanks to some blue cats, we have been able to see a better print of this available readily for home video, if, of course, you were lucky enough to get the 3D TVs when they came out before they were ceased in manufacturing. Here to discuss this is a return guest and a person who was able to jump on that bandwagon, and rightfully so. We will talk a little about it because thanks to him, I've gotten to see this movie in its proper 3D format today, and we're going to be talking about this movie immediately after watching it, which has not happened on Shamley Silhouette yet. This is a first on the show, but he is not a first on the show. He is a return guest. Please welcome Marshall Rosales.
Hello.
Oh, no. Another 4 hours. No. No.
I will do my best.
I'm jumping out the window.
I promise.
No. Thank you for coming back. The last time you were here, it'll have been a couple weeks, although it won't feel like that for you. We were talking about Hitchcock failures.
Yes.
This one is sort of in the middle. Like it's not a failure financially per se, but it's not. It's certainly not like the bigger success that he has in the 50s.
Yeah, and I think that really, by and large, that has to do with the fact that it mostly was not seen in 3D. I think this is a completely different experience watching this film in 3D, and I'm really happy that my third appearance is talking about 3D. So
yeah,
it's Marshall Rosales 3D.
Yeah, exactly.
Part 3D.
Part 3D. Oh, my God. That should be the title of the Part 3D. But before we jump directly into Hitchcock's, we talked about this on the Shamley that you were on, where we talked about the three failures. Mm-hmm. Which, you know, after we did our episode, I found some more that could easily create a part two. Like, of just like looking at the actual returns. It's just like, oh, well, gotcha. What did this not hit with an audience? But it's not the same that we talked. But we talked a little bit about the 3D technology afterward, because this is an interesting discussion in Hitchcock's career. He was always one to try out new technology, much like a George Lucas or a Steven Spielberg or a James Cameron. But he was a guy who would use new technology for old techniques.
Yes,
which is pretty interesting. So before we talk about him specifically, but the 3D process, it's not something that just popped out of the 50s out of the middle of nowhere. This thing has been around way before it, but it didn't become a commercial potential until about the 50s, like in terms of like a mass audience thing.
Well, it's actually the first 3D film. I mean, actually, it's interesting. The origins of 3D in the 50s are almost exactly the same as what happened with Avatar in terms of the first big 3D film that was made, and I've got the title here somewhere. pardon me for not having that part of the article completely set. Buona Devil.
Yep, Buona Devil with Nigel Bruce, who is a Hitchcock regular.
Came out November 26th, 1952, and that blew the box office up.
Yep.
And so from that standpoint, a lot of the studios wanted to jump on the 3D bandwagon because they saw it as a way that it's a gimmick and it's going to bring people to the theater. And I'm not sure that the theaters ran the same way that it did with Avatar, where they could just tack $4 onto every ticket for the 3D glasses.
That is one thing I didn't find in terms of like a set answer for it. You're right, though. It's a way to get people back in because this is the period where television is taking its rise to dominance in terms of the dominant form of mass entertainment. Movies are still a popular form of entertainment to this day, but we're in the middle of a second wave of this situation where television, or streaming in this case, is taking over. In the case of the 50s, you have the dominance of television, which is a technology that had been developed earlier than the 50s, but that innovation was kind of halted during World War II and then kind of resumes in 1946 and then is perfected and then was able to mass market. But there was television before television was what we know television to be today, which is your network shows, your commercials, your cartoons, stuff like that.
Right.
So the studios are scared shitless, and amongst others, people like Jack Warner are looking around going like, what can we do to get them back into our theaters? And this is around the time also that they're going to have to deal with the fact that they won't have their own theaters soon because of monopolies. But
right.
But so
3D is one of the things they turn to in terms of having something to offer audiences that television doesn't.
Yeah.
Also, the same amount, same time span when we're seeing the expanding aspect ratios.
Yes, exactly. You'll have Cinescope, VistaVision, a process that Hitchcock uses a lot in the 50s for the majority of his films. Yes. So yeah, it's just a way to get people into that crowd, and you have Buona Devil, and the way I got into 3D initially as a concept, even before Avatar, was seeing a 2D print of House of Wax and on DVD, and it's very clear where the 3D is supposed to be.
Right.
But it was the DVD copy. They didn't have a decent way to show the 3D because it would have been the anaglyph. Yeah. The red and blue.
Yeah, either red and blue, or sometimes you'll see it as a green or magenta.
Yeah, and you were talking a little bit about it when we were kind of initially discussing the potential of this episode, but you were talking about the actual technology. Like, there's a difference between, there's anaglyph, which is the red and blue, the red and green, as you were just discussing, but there's also the polarized lenses, which are the ones that we kind of utilize today.
Which actually is true 3D. Back even Buona Devil was shot using a silver screen and two projectors set up that were both throwing different wavelengths of light, that the audience would be wearing polarized lenses just in a paper housing and not blue and red.
Yeah.
The issue became that you actually needed two perfectly sunk projectors,
which is hard,
throwing the two different wavelengths. I guess one was two different wavelengths. One was through a lens, a polarized lens, and then the lenses that you were wearing would kind of depolarize what was being bounced back at you from the screen. So this was a very difficult technology to deal with both on set, because it and again, exactly the same way that we shoot 3D, that 3D is shot in modern days, in terms of where you have two different cameras that are either side by side, or one of them is shooting into a lens so that you can deal with your the distance between the two lenses. That's exactly how it was shot, except back in the 50s, we didn't have little tiny mini Alexas and
red cameras.
Yeah. So the contraption was gigantic. It was very hard to move, and was very slow and big and loud and all of these things. So it was difficult in the production. And then when you get into the projection booth, it's also very difficult. So most people who saw 3D in the 50s, it was not a fun experience, because it was really difficult to get not only both of the projectors sunk so that they're throwing the same image, but also to have them perfectly focused in the same area. So just it was very headache inducing, and it was very difficult to actually ever see a good print,
Right.
or a good run of a film.
You have to have a master projectionist there, and you have to make sure everything's working on the same wavelength. Otherwise, like one thing's out of place,
Right.
whole thing's ruined.
And it has to be perfectly in place also for all of the real changes. Not just it's not like just hitting 2 digital signals and getting them in sync at once. So the answer to that was this anaglyph process, which only required one projector. And so you could have your, again, either blue or green images, blue or red, or green or magenta. There are different schools of thought, and depending on how your eyes and brain are, sometimes blue or red will work better for you than green or magenta. So that could happen all on one print, and they essentially were taking both of the 3D images that were shot naturally for 3D, and then they were just throwing them either through a red filter or a blue filter to create that 3D effect. But if you have ever seen that, you can tell it is very difficult to enjoy in really any way, shape, or form.
So before we even had the invent of I guess would be the clarification of the polarized process with something like Avatar, the closest 3D experience that you and I would have ever had would have either been would have probably been one of the later Freddy movies, which was Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare in the early 90s. Or if you're like me, it's Spy Kids 3D Game Over, which was definitely a red and blue situation. And I remember the DVD even came with that, and it taught you how to adjust your TV so that you could watch it in 3D on your tube TV.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. I don't think it even friggin' worked to save anybody's life, but whatever. I mean, the company that put that out is no longer in business, they didn't even know what they were talking about to begin with.
Right.
But the technology in terms of its showing in the 50s is not too dissimilar from how they were trying to get sound to work in the early days of sound. Sound was a situation they're trying to figure out, like, well, they had been working on the idea for the sound on film process, but they hadn't perfected it yet. So at the time, it was, sound on disc. Vitaphone was the answer to that, but creating a perfect sync was difficult. So there wasn't always a guarantee that it was going to work until Sam Warner and his company kind of helped perfect it by buying out Vitaphone and then presenting the Jazz Singer as such. But even so, it took a long time to get other theaters wired for sound. That caused a sensation. 3D did not. 3D goes out the door.
Well, it was because it was really difficult to ever see it done well.
Yeah.
And also the same thing that we saw happen immediately after Avatar hit was because everyone was jumping on the 3D bandwagon, they didn't necessarily know how to shoot with 3D, and they were resting their a lot of the creative energy into let's make it 3D and that will be fun for the audience, as opposed to let's tell a story that is going to be enhanced with the 3D and let's cater our film to the fact that we now have this other way or enhanced way of viewing it. And so the experience wasn't that great, much like going to see like Clash of the Titans or Alice in Wonderland in 3D, where it's like, oh, let's hurry up and let's do this and let's forget about the fact that this is visual storytelling, and these two things should complement each other.
Right. And it's funny because, like, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Avatar as a film itself or whatever, but undeniably when we saw it in 3D, it was eye-popping, to say the least.
Oh, yeah, and I didn't even realize what I was saying when Avatar was, after I finished watching it the first time in the theater in 3D, and I just kind of, like, shrugged my shoulders, and I was like, I don't know why you would ever watch that in any other way than 3D.
Yeah.
And I was trying to play a compliment to the 3D, and I didn't realize that I was also making a comment on it.
It's the backhanded, but that doesn't always, like, sometimes it doesn't always come through. Sometimes you say something and you're just like, oh, I said the quiet part loud and the loud part quiet.
Right.
But yeah, no, and also with 3D, in addition to the inability to perfect it at that time in the 50s or to show it properly and resorting to anaglyph, you have CinemaScope coming around. So CinemaScope is kind of like a cheaper solution to it. You're not dealing with multiple cameras. You're not dealing with a bunch of interference, whereas CinemaScope is a process where it's a matter of finding different ways to process film. Like in the case of VistaVision, it's a wider piece. And in the case of other films, sometimes it's a matter of just reversing or flipping the way that the 35 millimeter film is processing. So instead of up and down, it's going side to side, and then that can create your larger effect. So it's just making wider strips of film. So 3D kind of just dies.
Yep.
Like, it just dies.
And to kind of bring this into Dial M, interestingly enough, I found some notes about the original press screening for this film. The projectors were out of sync.
Oh.
They stopped the movie halfway through.
Motherfucker.
And then just the second half of the film was played in 2D. So all of the initial, like, just that first wave of impression on the film was no one even, they didn't get to see it in 3D.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, the 3D doesn't work, and so now here's the 2D.
So now it's just a regular Hitchcock movie.
Yeah.
And
so that's why most people didn't see it in 3D in the 50s, because it was just so difficult to
and at that point, you're at a premiere, like you're at a press screening. I'm sure that the studio head might have been even been there, or a representative. So I'm just imagining Hitchcock sits there and he just turns and he just looks and goes, "Ask Jack if it was fucking worth it. Can you ask him if it was fucking worth it?"
Well, apparently
was, yeah.
Yeah, and there actually, on that note, there are conflicting reports of how on board with the 3D process Hitch was. There are some things that say that this was a total studio forced hand of like, sorry, Hitch, you're making this because it's going to make us a bunch of money and it's the fad. But there are other reports that actually 4 months prior to production, the movie was planned to be 3D from the beginning.
Yeah, which I would say it might be a compromise of the two. I mean, when you're dealing with the technology on hand, I would have to assume that there's going to be frustrations with it down the line, because if they're using the 2-camera process the way you would have to use it up to a certain point with Avatar, where it's a little bit more refined and a little bit easy, a little more compact. And in the case of if you read stories about the production of Friday the 13th Part 3D, that camera was a nightmare for them, the entire shoot.
Absolutely.
So I'd have to imagine there's issues with Hitchcock dealing with this camera. But yeah, the general implication on a behind-the-scenes featurette is that this is a studio forced hand situation and that Hitchcock makes the best of it. But then he also talks about, how he creates this film and is able to use that technology. So there's as you said, two different schools on this thought.
Yeah, and I really have to lean a little bit more on this was a planned thing, and I think that a project that from day one Hitchcock knew was going to be in 3D.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he very purposefully picked a stage play.
Yep.
And also very purposefully picked to not try to adapt it beyond the confines of a stage play.
Right.
In the way that one might normally do with a film. With a stage play adaptation into a film. And knowing that he could rest on playing with that 3D landscape in just one apartment for essentially an entire film.
It's a situation like, as I was watching it in 3D with you today, I was just like, Rope would be interesting in 3D. Really interesting in 3D. And that's a situation where I don't want them to do it, because conversion into 3D is a tricky situation. You take a gamble with it. Like Jurassic Park's the only one I've seen that even comes close to looking like it's worth the risk.
I'll show you the best 3D conversion I've ever seen when we're done with this.
Okay, nice. But yeah, and it's I would have to imagine that a man like Hitchcock, who is more than
Pacific Rim, by the way.
Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim.
I saw it in 3D when it came to the theater.
Yeah,
it was fun.
It's perfect.
It was lots of fun. But no, Hitchcock is his situation. Like if he's willing to use this newer technology to tell older stories, it makes sense. And a play like Dial M for Murder, which is a celebrated stage play, it's something that he can use the technology to tell it artfully and not necessarily using it as a gimmick. There are exceptions in certain parts of this film, but they never feel like a gimmick. It always it's hand in hand with Hitchcock's meticulous detail, which is funny because after this he does Rear Window. It's released in the same year. It's 54. So he shoots this film in 53. Comes out in 54. Rear Window comes out the same year. Both deal with singular locations for the most part, and both of them deal with a murder plot from a different point of view. In the case of Dial M for Murder, we're dealing with us, the audience, being more or less the peeping toms in this situation, and he shoots that intentionally. The way that camera is placed is directly set up to make us an accomplice in this movie.
Yes.
And obviously that's for the 3D effect, but also the detail, everything is set up like if you were to convert, I mean, not that it would work, but if you were to convert certain shots of a Hitchcock film the way he intentionally has inserts or characters doing things with their hands, it's the same thing. And we see that done to the best effect near the end of this movie.
So here's a fascinating thing I found out about this film is that was discovered, what you're talking about, all of those low angle shots and the sort of way to capture this story utilizing that 3D landscape is a thing that was discovered on set in the middle of shooting that they had done, from what I understand, actually several days of shooting. And we're going back and looking at the dailies and looking at the reels, and everyone was just disgusted with what they were seeing. They were just like, it looks really flat, and it is almost disorienting in the way that they were shooting. And so they actually went back and reshot a lot of the film, and that's when they were digging holes up in the stage so they could drop the camera below the floor line.
Ooh, oh yeah.
But a lot of that stuff was done in a learning process of having shot a portion of the film, not doing that.
Yeah, and there's particular shots during the first 30 minutes of this film that, at first I was just like, man, this would be an insult to Hitchcock, but it's almost like Orson Welles is directing this movie because there's a lot of stuff coming from below, which is like, it's not that Hitchcock wouldn't do that, but the way it's angled, I was just like, this feels like Citizen Kane a little bit here for a second on a visual spectrum. And yeah, that would solve those issues and also kind of find a way to create interesting things, because we'll get into it when we get into the plot, but the moments where things are sticking in your face, which I think is the common belief of what 3D is. Like, I know when Harold and Kumar 3D came out, that's why I went. I wanted to see weed smoke blow in my face. And I saw it, Marshall, and it was fine. Or Jackass 3D. I won't talk about that right now.
That's probably the best.
It's one of the best 3D movies ever made. We just won't talk about it right now. That's for another podcast. But I mean, and we'll jump into the plot here in just a second. But I wanted to ask from like a technical perspective, because this is I fully believe this is your episode at this point, because this is the one where the tech really does take over in a way it hasn't on this show. But it's important for our audience and also for myself even to learn from this, because this is an example of how technologies that become fads to a certain extent, like what happens when they overstay their welcome, but why are they worth keeping around and revitalizing every so often?
Yes.
In the case of 3D, I'll tell you the one that I feel is the best recent example of it within our lifetime is Hugo. Is Martin Scorsese's Hugo.
Yes.
And that doesn't just stem from the fact that I think that that movie is cinema, but because it doesn't have a superhero in it as far as I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure that Sacha Baron Cohen's not Iron Man in that movie.
Right.
But it's more just how he's using the space of that train station and to an extent the clock tower.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's the train station specifically, and he's doing Charlie Chaplin-esque gags with the space of what could feasibly be an extensive Broadway stage. So it's creating a depth that otherwise does not exist. Obviously, it's the most digitally looking thing he ever did. But watching Dial M for Murder, I completely understood even further as to why Hugo is the supreme 3D film, to my mind at the very least, just because it's using the technology. It's not using it as a gimmick, number one, but number two, it's adding something that if you watch it in the 2D, you don't get the same effect. And we can talk a little bit about that with Dial M for Murder, because there is a difference. There's a very clear difference between the two.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I am through and through a 3D champion. I will wave the banner of 3D long past it being gone.
Yeah.
Really hoping that the Avatar sequels are able to revitalize the 3D market, because it's dwindling.
20th Century Studios? That's 20th Century Studios. It's never had any other name, right? They're going to put them out. Yeah. Sure they will.
Yeah, because
I know.
It's not like,
sorry.
Yeah, just yes.
Yeah.
Disney has an absolute vendetta against 3D, which is one of the main reasons for my.
I didn't mean to open up a wound.
Every
I'm
time
sorry.
Disney is mentioned.
Yeah.
But I think that so. I guess I feel that if sound is a gimmick in film, then okay, fine, 3D is a gimmick in film. And if color is a gimmick in film, then okay, fine, 3D is a gimmick in film.
Yeah.
But the advent of sound was introducing an element into this this storytelling medium dealing with visuals that more closely resembled real life. And then when we introduced color, that also did the same thing. And I think that 3D does that also. Most of us who are fortunate enough to have two eyes also see in 3D. And so from that standpoint, it's really hard for me to kind of, bite my tongue when people want to describe 3D as only a gimmick.
Yes, absolutely.
I really admire and really fall in line with the way that James Cameron describes it, is that it should be another instrument for filmmakers to use, and that if it's a creative choice and is a way to better explore a story or to be immersive when that is actually the filmmaker's intention, then it can be and should be masterful. If it is used to add $4 to every ticket by the studios or by the theaters to, let's do a quick 3D conversion or whatever, then you are muddying. I guess then you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
No, it's a cheap buck.
It's a cheap buck, and audiences understand that. Like audiences are not that stupid.
Yeah,
audiences can be stupid in some ways, but they're not that stupid in terms of if they're not getting anything more out of an experience at adding a premium on their ticket, then they're not going to go, and so you're going to see ticket sales fall. But if every film that came out in 3D was an Avatar-like experience, or a Hugo-like experience, or a, forget the story for a second, but a Prometheus-like experience.
Oh, that's not. No, Prometheus. I saw that in IMAX 3D. That looked.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
It's one of the most gorgeous films I've ever seen.
Yeah,
it's a train wreck as a movie.
Yeah,
but but visual. But that's what I'm talking about. Visually, is that movie was shot in 3D. It was planned in 3D. It was executed in 3D, and you can tell. The experience of watching that film is different in 3D than it is in 2D.
Agreed. Absolutely.
And if that's what all 3D films were, as opposed to just a way to make an extra buck, then I don't think that we would see the dwindling of 3D the way that we have.
Can I tell you a first-hand experience of what this was like?
Yeah.
So I worked at a movie theater from 2007 till 2013. Well, I worked at two different chains, but this first particular chain I worked from 2007 to late 2012, and I won't mention the full chain out loud, but 2 years into working there, we got Avatar, and I went to one of our other locations to watch it at midnight with some friends, and I was just starting film school, so obviously, let's watch James Cameron's first film in forever. And I walked out satisfied. I was just like, oh, it's interesting. It was Fern Gully with blue cats. Gotcha. But the 3D was undeniably beautiful. So our theater only had one or two digital projectors. So we could only show it in certain theaters. We couldn't show it in our biggest seating auditoriums. So the film sold out in 3D pretty regularly for a while, and we kept it around for a long time. And as we started getting more 3D films, the more 35mm projectors started going away. Slow by slow. At the same time, every time I was getting a new 3D film with a 2D print that was adjacent to it, that 2D print was selling out more than the 3D one. The films that would normally do this were ones that were post-converted, or were ones that were just not using the technology properly. Hugo just did no business, period, which sucks. But that's a whole other issue with audiences. But I think that the final, by the time I finally left, Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey was about to come out. Another chain that I worked for around that time, we had maybe one 3D screening of it per show day. And it was not the 48 frames per second one that he was doing. Other locations had more, but ours was smaller. So we'd have mainly 2D because they knew where they were going to make their money. So the gimmick even started dying within 3 years, or it started, people weren't taking it seriously. So then people like Peter Jackson, who are using it properly, albeit I haven't seen the 48 frames per second, so I could not comment on that. But also
shooting in 3D.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that if you look at, and I'm pretty sure I've got this right because it's a passion of mine.
Yeah.
Is Avatar comes out, it breaks the box office.
Mm-hmm.
And the next two movies that come out in 3D,
Clash of the Titans
and Alice in Wonderland,
yeah,
which were
both
post-converted, and they are both 2-week post-conversions.
Yeah.
A typical post-conversion process is a 12-week process.
Yeah. And
these were both done in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So they looked horrible. They were hard on the eyes. It looked like pop-up books.
Mm-hmm.
It was atrocious. And those were the first two big experiences, which were both Clash of the Titans PG-13, Alice in Wonderland I think also was PG-13.
Either PG or PG-13.
PG or PG-13. So, but it was like, bring the whole family, everyone come. Oh my gosh, it's this recreation of this huge epic, and then we're doing this live-action retelling of a Disney favorite, and Lewis Carroll favorite, and all of these things. Tim Burton, oh my God, look at this. So a lot of audiences went to go see it.
Johnny Depp, but he's weird in 3D.
And they went to go see it in 3D, and it was this horrible experience.
But...
So if, imagine if the first time you had some amazing dinner, whatever your favorite food is, if the next two times that you had that, it was butchered and horrible, and there was hair in the food, and it was under or overcooked, you would be like, no, I'm good. I actually, it was really fun the first time, but turns out, not so much. Yeah. And that's that within the first 3D films that came out, the studios had done a huge disservice to themselves.
And what's interesting is Clash of the Titans made money, but I don't know how much it made by comparison to what I'm about to say, which is Alice in Wonderland is a situation where it made $1 billion. So people were still going to it even though it was not a good conversion.
Right.
Or at the
which
very
is
least,
the worst thing you can do for Hollywood is teach them a bad lesson.
Yeah.
Which is, we can just throw 3D on anything and make $1 billion.
So then when people like Scorsese or Jackson are doing it correctly, or even Cameron if he's deciding to, produce something where he's supervising, whether it's an IMAX documentary or... I know he did some kind of underwater horror film not too long after that where he produced it or was involved in the production of it. That's a disservice to what they do. Is what's interesting is the Resident Evil movies, they're not perfect with it, but Paul W.S. Anderson actively had spoken about, I'm learning how the technology works.
Yeah.
Does it work all the time? Not really, but...
Well, James Cameron put himself up for free.
Yeah.
He was like, I will come be your 3D technical advisor on your film.
Yeah.
I want this to be used,
but
I need it to be used by creatives, not by studio heads.
Yeah. And then just... very, very few people took him up on the offer. Yeah. I remember the EPK for Hugo was specifically driven towards talking about James Cameron and how great he was, and I was just like, don't do that. Don't feed his ego more. But regardless, Cameron did, do something very revolutionary with it these days. Well, let's jump back many, many years prior.
Yes.
Many, many years. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Which is not a dissimilar story to
the
fallen or the rise and fall of 3D.
Let's say one empire took over another empire in that situation.
Yes.
But no, we'll jump back into the 1950s here, the good old 50s. Communism's on the rise in our brains, and so we're hiding under desks. But we're also going to the movies when we're not underneath our desks. Mm-hmm. But apparently nobody was going to Alfred Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder, directed by the guy I just mentioned. Screenplay by Frederick Knott, based on his play Dial M for Murder. Very successful stage play. Stars Ray Milland, Grace Kelly, Robert Cummings, and John Williams. Music by Dmitri Tiomkin. And it was released in 1954. And made about $6 million for a budget of 1.4. So it made its money, but...
So, interesting story.
Yeah.
Do you know why it was released in 1954?
I have not been able to find the reason, because I know it was shot in 1953, but they delayed it a bunch.
They delayed it because the play was so successful. They legally had to wait until the play run was over to release it. which also delayed the film past the 3D craze.
Wow.
And was part of why it was not successful.
So real 3D, like true 3D, like actually just regular dimensions of your eyeballs superseded 3D.
Yes.
We still go to Broadway plays, guys. The technology didn't last. Oh God, that's a shame for Hitchcock. But I mean, that's a testament to the success of this story, because this movie has been remade in different forms.
It's
whether
such a
it's
smart script.
Yeah,
It's such a smart script.
Yeah, and I mean, if you are looking for similar films, we'll kind of do what we do at the end a little bit in advance. You can watch A Perfect Murder from 1998 with Michael Douglas and Gwyneth Paltrow. It's your own risk. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but and Alfred Hitchcock Presents has done versions of this. Has done versions of this, but has utilized like different motives from this particular piece. But this is the piece that it's weird. Like sometimes it gets confused with Sorry Wrong Number, which is a radio play. But it's not, like, the phone does not take precedent as a thematic trope as much as the idea of Ray Milland's character thinking he can get away with anything he wants to. Whereas something like Sorry for Wrong Number is more from the perspective of Barbara Stanwyck. Grace Kelly, the first time we are working with Grace Kelly under Alfred Hitchcock's auspices, she's not in the movie that much. Not compared to other times she is working with Hitch.
No.
In fact, this is very much Ray Milland's show. And it's pretty fascinating to watch. I think Ray Milland is a very interesting 3D character. And I say that because he knows how to work with the camera to add to the effect. Normally, Hitchcock's camera is the king, and the actors have to play in that box. It seems like this is the first time where this is a compromise, because he knows that the technology is not the same as working with a regular camera. So the actors have to move around in there and can kind of dictate a little bit more. They have a little bit more wiggle room. Whereas if you were working with, say, Jimmy Stewart in Rear Window, that camera is locked with where Hitchcock wants it to be. But if the actors need to feel comfortable in order to make the technology work correctly, you have to direct them in such a way that they aren't, they aren't feeling restricted. They need to feel motivated. Ray Milland, his motivations for how he moves in this film add to the effect of the 3D, especially in certain medium shots.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that, and I think I would say that's very much by design. I think, especially knowing that they had to go back and reshoot portions of the film, and the things that they were particularly tweaking in the reshoots were putting stuff in the foreground, and so I think the precise blocking necessary for that is extremely paramount, especially when you're talking about things like focus and movement and framing and things like that. Is that if an actor isn't on their mark, then one or both of the cameras is going to be out of focus, and so you ruin the shot. Exactly, and that's always an issue, even with just one camera, because you can have to deal with focus, even if you're dealing with like 70 millimeter lenses or anything like that. If you're talking about a 3D camera, they talk about also for Friday the 13th part 3, which is, it's a good example of this. It's like if you weren't in a specific place at a specific time, it's not going to work.
Right.
Like,
the technology just won't work, and it's just going to misread, and you'll have to redo the take anyway, which adds to what you're saying about the reshoots on this film. Like, of course they would have had to do this. They're working with technology that they don't fully understand yet.
Yeah.
So before we're going to jump into the plot here in just a second, but I want to bring it up. This is truly the first film post the Transatlantic Pictures phase. Transatlantic Pictures is the company that Hitchcock started with Sidney Bernstein, who he worked with during the war period and had worked earlier in Britain with. They made Rope under Capricorn, and then kind of combined forces with Warner Brothers to make Stage Fright. Then went on to work with Warner Brothers to create, amongst other things, I Confess with Robert Montgomery, or Montgomery Clift, sorry. And this is the first film post-Transatlantic period because they split up at this point. So now Hitchcock is fully under the studio dome again, but this time it's not in the Selznick realm where he has Selznick loaning him out to other studios, but he still answers to Selznick. This is Hitchcock really starting to gain a little bit more control. Unfortunately, he's dealing with Jack Warner. And Jack Warner, obviously the one who more than... If there is any influence into, can you make a 3D picture for us, it's Jack Warner telling him to do that. But that's, again, going into, is this Hitchcock's idea or is this Jack Warner's idea? That's why I say I think it's a little bit of both, because I can't imagine Jack Warner would tell him, no, don't do 3D, when 3D is, in 1953, a rising trend, before it then goes down the tubes later that year into next year.
Yeah, I think that it's, I mean, and you're probably correct, is that it's somewhere in between. I think that for me, in the initial things that I was reading and coming across, the attitude seemed to be more of, oh, Hitchcock, this next movie that you are already doing that is called Dial M for Murder, you now need to do it in 3D. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, let's have your next film be 3D. What would you like to do in 3D?
He's like, I don't know a play.
Right. Now we're catering the business to that. There's also apparently rumors that Hitchcock never thought the film would play in 3D ever, even though they were shooting it in 3D.
That's highly unlikely.
And that's highly, given how well the business was doing through 53 and for 3D films, very, very unlikely.
Yeah, no, it's highly unlikely. And also, it doesn't seem to trend well with the normal thing that we know about Hitchcock, which is he's willing to try new things. He may stick to his old story formulas, but technologically, he always tries to advance it. When he tries to advance story-wise or content-wise, it's when it becomes tricky, and it's called the 60s, which as we've already discussed. And also, this is the first appearance of Grace Kelly, so this is not a footnote in Hitchcock's history by any stretch.
No.
The ultimate Hitchcock blonde. This is the one that people point to, even though she's only in 3 films. Obviously, the one that comes after this is the big one. This is the one. That's the one we will remember her for, even more than To Catch a Thief, I'd honestly say.
Oh, yeah, hands down.
If we're talking about the association with Hitchcock.
With Vertigo, yep. And actually, Grace Kelly described working with the 3D camera. She said it was like going into the boxing ring with your hands tied behind your back.
Which makes total sense.
Yeah, which, again, kind of leads me to believe that there wasn't much freedom for the actors there, that it was like, this is exactly where you need to be, this is how it is, and everyone is kind of at the mercy of not even Hitch's camera, but the technology's camera, because he's dealing with that.
Which makes me think that Hitch has to make concessions prior to the setup, too.
Oh, very much so, yes. She said that she never saw him lose patience. He never became angry, even when the technicians said, like, oh, no, with this camera, like, we can't do this.
But you told me it would work, Jimmy. You told me it would fucking work.
But I want it.
Yeah. For a guy who was used to pre-production and pre-planning, and much like anything else, this movie is storyboarded, it is crafted, it is constructed. You're dealing with a technology that is unproven, so if it doesn't work, it's not going to work as efficiently as another film where he knows the setup. All he has to do is point and shoot.
Right.
Now you're dealing with 2 cameras. Now you're dealing with different setups. Blocking's going to be different. Lighting can be a tricky issue too. Mm-hmm. And as we see in the prints, the difference between lighting on the 2D print and the 3D print is staggering to me, and just how light is used. But this is also a situation where Hitchcock is. It's weird because he had to go through this in Rope as well. And so it's interesting that he put himself through this twice within the span of less than 10 years, which is like, I'm going to make this play. How do I make it interesting? I'll adopt a very crazy technology. First, it's single takes, which were frustrating for the actors. And now it's 3D, which I have to imagine is at the very least annoying to him. Even though, as Kelly says, doesn't lose patience.
So I've got a quote here from Hitchcock that I love. He says, "Tremendous new problems with this medium, and most of them in the hands of the director. Mm-hmm. Don't let any of these actors tell you it's different. It isn't, not for them. In fact, 3D even makes them look thinner."
Oh, my God. I'm glad you're our expert for this today, because I have not been able to find any of this stuff. So Kelly, to chat about her for a little bit, Hitchcock was one of Kelly's last mentors. Amongst others were like Gary Cooper. So she comes up through the scene. She rises really quick. then gets married to a prince, and then leaves just as quick. It's a blip on a radar. It's really interesting how her career flourished. We talked a little bit more about just the way she activates her agency in something like Rear Window, where she is a character that is basically the hero, and Jimmy Stewart is just like left limp in the room.
Oh yes,
and it's fascinating. In this film, though, you're starting off with Grace Kelly. Hitchcock clearly saw the potential. It was always discussed that Alma and him loved her to death and loved working with her. Pat Hitchcock has nothing but amazing things to say about their relationship and working with each other, because Kelly and Hitchcock were in tandem and understood what one wanted from the other. And this is something that's interesting to watch from the start, because even though she is kind of given technically the kind of the shaft in terms of her importance in Dial M for Murder, she still shines through.
Yes,
because
I just gave her the shaft earlier too. I said Vertigo and not Rear Window.
Vertigo is Kim Novak.
Plebeian. Yes, my apologies.
And that was supposed to be Vera Miles, and then Vera Miles got pregnant, and Hitchcock became an asshole. But so let's jump into the plot, though, because talking about Grace Kelly as a third wheel, it sounds like that wouldn't be the case, because she has some of the best set pieces in this movie, to herself or to a co-star. But we'll jump into it. We start with a kiss, and then we reveal it's Ray Milland and Grace Kelly kissing. They're a married couple.
Tony and Margot.
Wendis. Wendis. Not
ICE.
Wenders. Not Wenders. When I remember when I was watching it earlier today in the 2D version, I heard the way they're saying Wendis. I was like, Wenders? Wenders?
I just like that. Is that with a double S?
No,
an ICE.
ICE. Wendice. Roll them. No, Tony and Margot are married. Seem like they're happy. She reads in the paper that Mark Halliday has arrived. Mark Halliday, the famous crime writer. So he arrives on a boat, and then the next shot we see, Margot is not only dressed in red, but smooching Mark. So clearly she's been unfaithful. And you hear Hitchcock in the back going like, "Yep, it's what I do." Look. This is the part where they're going to say that they can't go through with it anymore. But then little does she know that her husband knows. Because guess what? Her husband does know.
Yes, he does.
Ray Milland. Tony knows what's going on. But we don't find it out fully. First, we're kind of just given the whole, friendly banter between the person who's committing the infidelity and the husband. And Margot and Mark are sent off to see a show. He's got to take care of some business. In fact, he calls up a person that is selling a car and trying to get him over there to try to settle the price. It, in fact, is Charles Swan, who uses, amongst other things, other aliases, but Tony knows him from college. He knows him also to be a thief.
Yes.
And somebody of ill repute. And over the course of a scene of what is basically exposition and plot, we get Ray Milland acting his ass off in such a beautiful way. It's like watching a great comedy performance with a straight man in the comic, with Tony Dawson as Mr. Swan being your straight man and kind of asking the questions, and Milland responding in tandem like a very perfectly timed vaudeville routine of drama. It is fascinating, because this is usually the moment where this would be boring as sin, where he's explaining every single detail of what he knows and what he plans to do. But he makes it a character piece. If you watch the performance, especially within the 3D, you watch him, he's grabbing different things and just wiping the fingerprints off.
That's my favorite part of the whole film. It's this wonderful cat and mouse scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I especially the setup for it is, when he's calling Swan over thinking he's going to buy his car, he's already talking to him saying, I'm not too happy with the price at $1,100. I'm going to talk you down. You're going to have a couple brandies, and I'm going to talk you down. And so he's even setting the conversation up as, I'm going to be persuasive and I'm going to be playing with you. And it ends up being exactly that, but has nothing to do with the car.
Yeah.
And there is this, once the trap is set, when he starts going around the room and continuing to gleefully tell his story while wiping Swan's fingerprints off of everything that he has touched around the apartment. It's amazing.
Excuse me, do you mind if I fuck with you some more? Yes. Now I'm going to continue fucking with you. Are you ready for me to keep fucking with you? That's what he's doing, yes.
But it's just like the precision that he's doing it with is, this is clearly a thing that he is obsessed over for a very long time, and he has it all laid out. And so now he's just having fun in the execution, pun intended, of this plan that he has.
Yep.
And that it's like he doesn't even need Swan to respond because he knows he's got him.
Yeah. And he's using, and this goes back to Hitchcock. It's weird because a lot of stuff that happens in this film finds itself back again in Rear Window in terms of just, it's small things, it's props, it's different things that are set up at the beginning that pay off down the line. The bank book is a great example of how that comes back for more of a comedic effect. The key, the use of the key. We'll talk about the key later because the key is fun. And the stockings. There are different MacGuffins in this plot that don't mean anything to the overall impact, but they mean something to the characters because they've got to find this thing in order to figure out what happened. And so they keep discussing, and it's revealed that Swan has been conning different ladies, and basically he's murdered at least one, and that he's being blackmailed to kill Margot so that Tony can abscond with his funds. Because we should say, not only is he a privileged scary fuck, he's also a penniless rich privileged fuck.
Failed tennis star.
Yeah, exactly. Who gave up tennis to be with his wife.
Or an aged tennis star. I think that, there's definitely some interesting things going on with Tony sort of running away from his age and, in the film.
Do you think that Tony met Farley Granger from Strangers on a Train during a tennis match and they just said hi to each other? And then that's where the universes cross?
At least, yes.
I want to bring the MCU into this, but I just has been hard to. Now I realize, there's 2 tennis pros in 2 Hitchcock movies. This is not a coincidence, guys. It's all connected. But so, yeah, Tony says, I'll pay $1,000 to kill my wife. And he goes through the plot of how to kill the wife. He basically plans out the perfect murder, how to get away with it. And in a Hitchcock film, the way, a lot of the stuff, like the initial, details of these plots aren't always meant to, matter so much as the overall impact of, you kill this person. The details, because they're kind of being thrown at you so fast, you feel like you are in the presence of a mastermind, like a criminal genius to a certain degree, because he is basically laying out every perfect angle. It is fascinating to watch from a film this early back.
It's also interesting to see a thriller around a murder where the protagonist is actually the bad guy.
Yeah.
He's the one who's driving the entire plot.
It's from his point of view.
Also empathizing with him. Because as the film kind of goes, it's just like, oh, is he going to get found out? Is the chief inspector going to catch on? What's going to happen? And so in doing that, the machinations of the script and of the film essentially make this a heist film. Yeah. Except what he's stealing is his wife's life and then her insurance money. Yeah. Life insurance money.
It's interesting. I mean, obviously by the time we get to the end, you are, and it would be hard to say this for every single person, but your empathy with Tony runs out to a certain extent because it's going so far. And when you see Grace Kelly, by the end of the film, she's clearly been through hell.
Oh yeah, there's a very masterful, subtle shift that happens. Yeah, where we're seeing things happen that Tony's not privy to, and that gets the audience in the place where they can celebrate the end of the film the way that they do with the way that it ends, in a way that doesn't have them feeling defeated just because Tony was defeated. And, however, the driving course of the film is, I mean, Tony's still the protagonist. He's still the one driving the film.
Yeah.
But through the majority of the film, the audience is in, I don't think necessarily like wanting for Margot to die, but it is this like, oh, I wonder if it's going to have...
Could he get away with it?
Will it work out?
Yeah.
And I kind of hope it does.
Yeah, it's that dark underbelly of like... It's funny, Strangers on a Train kind of addresses this similar situation, like, and you are wondering, like, well, what would happen if you did the crisscross? And then we get the answer, and it's disturbing, but, you know, and this one is kind of like, he's disarming you a lot with his charm, because even though he is actively talking about, I want you to kill my wife, and if you don't kill my wife, I'm going to blackmail the fuck out of you. Like, you're still just like, yeah, but could he get away with it?
Even at the offer of $1,000, the response is for murder, and the retort to that is like, it's just a couple of minutes.
It's a typical rich guy response, like, I'll give you $100 if you take a shit on my shoe. Like, it's just like 2 seconds of work for you and one bean burrito.
It's nothing.
But so Tony convinces him, wears this guy down, and they kind of basically go over, you know, how are you going to get in? Like, how are you going to sneak up behind her? And
like, really think, I mean, just, it's a heist film. It's
yeah.
like, here's where we need to break in. Here's where the security guards are. Here's what the security system is. It is a heist film through and through.
Yeah, the only thing it's missing is Carl Reiner asking if we're going to steal $11 million. I mean, if he was in the corner, it'd be interesting. But no, so he goes over that plot. He introduces the element of the key, which is very important. The key is our main MacGuffin, which is that the key itself means nothing other than it's important to figure out where these keys end up in order for others to figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. Because we are again dealing with a perfect bomb under the table scenario where we are privy to everything that is going on. We are privy to everything that Ray Milland is about to execute, and then we have to watch the other people around them figure it out. Normally in a detective movie, which this kind of is, that can be frustrating. You've got a situation like 12 years prior where you have a Sherlock Holmes movie where Sherlock Holmes is 2 steps behind the audience itself. So something like this, obviously you don't have a stigma of a master detective. What you have instead is John Williams, which is just, I think is just equally as charming.
Chief Inspector Hubbard.
Yeah, and we also have like some stuff like this happen to great effect down the line in our generation, whether it's like Knives Out is a great example of that, where we are given a lot of stuff up front and get to watch that bomb under the table, and when is that knowledge going to fully come out, and then when it does, how is it elaborated on it further? And in the case of this, a lot of stuff gets revealed as time goes on. It's just a matter of are these people ever going to believe what's going on?
Yes.
So we cut to the next day because it's been planned for that next day, which I love the line before where he's just like, tomorrow I've got to think this over, like, which I agree with Swan, because it's murder. It's not, I'm gonna like steal a necklace. It's taking a life. Mm-hmm. It's a typical scenario of like 40s and 50s pulpy kind of seedy dramas of just like these people who are willing to kill at the drop of a dime that don't consider anything beyond that. Like they're drawn very one-dimensionally. But Swan is very interesting because he does have hesitation. And that whole scene shows that he's not fully sold on this idea until it's absolutely clear he has no other way to get out without risking his own freedom.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the thing is, like, it doesn't matter whether he's resistant or not. He has no choice.
Yeah.
Because this is the trap that Tony set for him, and, like, that's, you know, it's going to happen the way it's going to happen because that's what Tony wants.
It's my mouse trap. Would you like to come into my mouse trap? So it's the next day. Mark and Tony are going to go to a stag party. And the way the plan is set up, Grace Kelly has to stay home the entire night. She's supposed to listen to her Saturday night theater, but she doesn't want to do that tonight because it's a thriller, and she gets scared because of thrillers. And then Hitchcock's in the back going like, "You're in one. That's why it's funny."
I don't like what. I don't like Liz when I'm alone.
This is what I'm good at. You see, I did meta before that Joss man did it for that superhero thing. I still love that Hitchcock knows modern day things. Modern references. Yeah. No. He's so like Seinfeld. What's the deal with airline food? But no. So Ray Milland has to essentially convince Grace Kelly to stay in the house, and it becomes one of what I think is one of the funniest games of gaslighting. Like, oh, you don't want to wait in the theater. Like, you don't want to. Don't you want to stay at home? Like, just kind of like, no, you're. The outside is terrible. Don't do it. Like, it's pretty. It's not like what you get in Vertigo down the line, where it's just people intentionally fucking with people. This is one just kind of like just being coy as shit, and I fucking love it. And he's basically convincing her, stay in this house. He's also got to get the key switched out because she's got her extra key. He's got his key. He needs to get her key to get it under the stairwell outside so that Swan can break in.
Yeah, there's this fantastic conversation that happens right before this scene where the idea of is a perfect murder possible gets brought up with the thriller writer.
Yes.
With Mark. And this discussion happens, which essentially is the film. It's this small little conversation that's wonderful that is the entire film, which is, yes, it's possible to plan a perfect murder. It's possible to write a perfect murder. But life always kind of like gets in the way. It's the
something
opposite of Jeff Goldblum's. Sorry, Ian Malcolm. Life doesn't always find a way. Sometimes life gets in the way.
Now, Milland, you can't just do a murder. You just sometimes the dinosaurs will just come. Like that's just what they do.
Yes.
I feel like I'm trapped between two films I don't understand, and I also have wings for some reason, so I think I might be a fly.
Let me vomit on a donut.
You know what?
Think
Actually,
it over.
you know what? This makes me realize Jeff Goldblum would have been great in a Hitchcock movie. I don't know where you exactly put him, but he would have been great somehow. I know he would have been able to bring something to it. Mm-hmm. Whether it's like, actually, he would have been fun in Jamaica Inn. Replace Charles Lawton with him. Just let him have fun with that role. Jeff Goldblum in Jamaica Inn, guys, make it happen. Disney, you can make it happen. You make other things happen, right?
You make other things happen.
But yeah, no, we get an allusion to what's going to happen down the line, and it's also, a commentary on the genre itself, where it's just like, well, these crimes always have a way of being fucked up one way or another, and then getting solved.
And that ends up being the film, is that we're just kind of seeing like, does Tony actually have everything figured out?
Yeah.
And when things go wrong, how quick can he be on his feet?
He presumes that things work like clockwork in a way that life is. He is privileged because he just assumes life runs according to his clock. Yeah, you're right. He is extremely privileged, like in a bad way. Like,
and on that note, I think that there's an interesting thing going on also with time and Tony's relationship with time, because one of the things that gets messed up is he forgets to wind his watch.
Yeah.
And so when he needs to time this call back to his flat so that the murder can happen, he forgets to wind his watch, so he doesn't know what time it is.
And he has to reach out to others to compare time. So even he's not fully committed to the perfection of this crime that he supposes will go off without a hitch.
But I think that there's a bit to be said about Tony really trying to take back control of time.
Yeah.
Is that he's this aging tennis star, gets aged out of being able to play tennis, and was married because he was this tennis star and this young, awesome hotshot.
Who then convinced him to stop, is what he says in the speech, is that she convinced him to stop playing.
Well, right, but I think that part of that is because, like, is he convinced to stop because he's getting older, but meanwhile she's already carrying on with another person, so he's now lost this. He's very much sees his wife Margot as this prize, and that he is now lost, and so if he can't have her, no one's going to have her, and I'll get this all figured out. And so he's really trying to like take back control of this loss of power, this loss of time. It ends up being the thing that really partially screws him over, trips him up in terms of not winding his watch. And then it then it just kind of begins. At one point there's the phrase of like get the ball rolling. Is that now it is clockwork.
Yep.
All of the pieces have been set in place, and now we're just kind of watching things happen, and time catches up with them.
Yeah, exactly. And if anything, it's what's lovely is that because he's so certain that it has to be tomorrow, because this is the way I've set it up, because he's looking for an efficiency that will be proven to not exist because it extends way beyond its expected date.
Right. Well, even to the extent of he's trying to have this wonderful irony of the guy who is cuckolding him being his alibi.
Yeah.
But he also happens to choose for his alibi this expert mystery thriller crime writer who solves it all.
Who could and who, if anything, could corroborate him. Like if something were to happen, it'd just be like, well, I deal with this in my line of work, and this seems to add up. And then that way he won't be suspicious and start snooping around. He's trying to cover every angle. He's just not paying attention to the tiniest things, like his watch, or sometimes not everybody wants to listen to the radio on a Saturday night, or the fact that sometimes people answer the phone because they're worried about their significant other.
Well, and also the thing that he finally convinces Margot to stay at home and do is finish her newspaper clippings.
Yep.
Which causes her to leave the scissors out, which is what causes the murder to go wrong.
Yep. And and what's interesting is like Grace Kelly gives a great performance in this movie. I know I was talking about how she's kind of like a third wheel, but she is giving a terrific performance. She is important to the story, obviously. And what's interesting is that throughout the entirety of this, she never suspects him once. She never even remotely does that. At the beginning of that conversation with Mark Halliday, she says that he's changed. It's different from when he would have been more suspicious or of a jealous husband. She's thoroughly convinced he's changed, which we know, obviously, he's gotten worse, like over time, obviously.
Yeah, I think that that is also a very interesting setup to Tony's character, is that she does say several times, oh, you don't understand, he's changed. And I think that she has probably noticed like a sinister glint in his eye or a coldness about him.
Yeah.
And would maybe suspect him of directly murdering her.
Yeah.
But of setting some elaborate trap.
Yeah, no, it just feels like it wouldn't happen for the sake of that money and whatnot. I mean, it's interesting because you do get both of their perspectives. It's kind of like Marriage Story, but not really. Like, and I know that sounds like a joke, but it's just like you are getting their different perspectives, and it helps enhance what this marriage is and what leads to its ultimate unraveling. Not even just through the murder itself, but also like how he continues to manipulate her because she's technically in a jam because she's left alone in the house. He's gone off to the stag party with Mark. We're waiting for Swan. Swan gets in, and we're dealing again with Hitchcock dealing very well with very minimal sound, only the pictures. We are seeing the plan unfold, beautifully lit. Let's talk a little bit about the 3D here for these two scenes that we've been discussing to death really quick, because the amount of voyeurism in this film is even more staggering on a 3D level than Rear Window can be at times. Rear Window is obviously the best example of the voyeurist or the POV angle on Hitchcock. I'd argue if you watch Dial M for Murder in 3D, you are watching an active voyeuristic participation within that viewing. You are actively a voyeur in that movie, and you are brought into it because of the third dimension angle on it. A lot of stuff in the foreground to suggest that people are kind of snooping in, while also adding the depth that is required for that shot to create that 3D effect and to make it work.
Yeah, it's a very involving use of 3D. It's interesting. I think it's a pretty unique way, from what I've experienced. Most 3D seems to be immersive in the way that like wraps the world around you. And in Dial M for Murder, the 3D, the particular use of it throws you into the flat.
Yep.
And I know that's, you can argue semantics. I'll argue it all day long.
Yeah.
but it is a nuanced difference.
Yeah.
But it is unsettling.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have not seen Dial M for Murder in 2D. I have no reason to ever.
No, you don't. I mean, well, I clearly saw that today because your setup is amazing. You can't see it, folks, but he's got a setup that would, make any cinephile jealous.
I call it Sanctuary.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, and then sometimes you ring a bell on top of your apartment building every night and say those words. But you're right. You are brought into not only to that flat, you are brought into their conflict. You are brought into their dilemma and their drama to the point where when we get to the buildup of Swan about to kill her, you are at a distance, obviously, but you are on the edge of your seat because you feel like he's reaching out for someone who could be you.
Mm-hmm.
You can be put in Grace Kelly's place. You can even be put in Ray Milland's place in certain areas of this film, but you are actively participating with everything that's going on. And when we get to the murder sequence, I felt it was an unnerving use of 3D in terms of how that murder takes place, because you want to talk about sticking your hand out or doing paddle balls at the screen like in House of Wax. When her hand extends out, it's unsettling until she grabs the scissors and then stabs Swan in the back.
Yes.
Because he's about to strangle her with nylons.
Which just like I don't love that I'm giving homicide advice, but
well then don't.
Nylons are like just way too stretchy of a material to try to strangle someone with. The amount of force that it takes to get them taut enough to actually be a resistance that's going to cut off someone's air or windpipe is just it's not practical. So Swan, get it together, man. Nylons was a bad choice.
It's good at Hitchcock just watching it in the screening room. Oh, that's not realistic. Oh, fuck! God damn it! That seemed like a good idea. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Alma. Well, did I see stalking? Or did you say stalking?
Swan's a hands-off murderer. The person that he murdered before, he overdosed. He poisoned. So
yeah,
he didn't have to be present for.
Yeah, he's
an amateur.
And it's also like with her, he is trying to make it quick because he's scared shitless. Whereas the other one, it's more calculated and methodical to his ends, much like Ray Milland is.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in a stressful situation where you're just being asked yesterday, I want you to kill somebody for £1,000 or I'll blackmail you, he's a stressed out killer. And, that leads into why he can make such a mistake as to not see a pair of scissors prior to committing his murder. Or, finding something other than pantyhose to strangle a woman. So, so she stabs him with the scissors. He falls. Prior to the struggle, she gets a call from Ray Milland, but Milland isn't answering the phone because he's timed this whole thing wrong because of his damn watch.
So this is happening like late at night, and the whole plan is Tony's going to call Margot, his wife at home, who's sleeping in bed, and that's going to get her to wake up and cross the living room completely in the dark and make her vulnerable to this strangling. Yeah, that's the whole setup for the murder.
Yep. And what we see is Swan hesitating much longer than it seems like he should be.
Well, I think that, and that's again, I'm the sick one here, but I that is a moment of pure Hitchcock comedy to me. Is watching Swan trying to strangle her, but she has her hand up with the phone to her ear. Mm-hmm. And so her wrist and the phone are blocking his ability to actually get the nylons around her neck. So every time that he thinks that she's going to hang up, he makes a move to go strangle her, and then she keeps talking, and then he has to draw back. And it's this back and forth moment in all of this tension, especially in 3D, because you can see exactly how close he is to her, and just that him coming out from the curtains behind her, and it's all right there in your face. But it's this, like, the comedy in this dark moment. It's amazing.
You're in a black box of macabre humor in there, and it's unsettling in the 3D because of that depth that is added. Like, good 3D can sometimes feel like a stage play, which this is.
Mm-hmm.
And it can also just feel like you are stepping into their living room, which this is. So it's using all those best techniques. Not to mention the fact that, you've got other things kind of at play with Hitchcock's editing. Hitchcock, edits to the points where he wants to. It's all intentional. It's all methodical. One of the best shots in 3D is one that I learned today was constructed in a way I didn't expect, which is the close-up of the phone that Ray Milland uses to call his wife. It's a big-ass telephone with a big-ass finger that was constructed by Mr. Hitchcock to get the close-up as possible, because a close-up is not as easy as you'd think, especially with two cameras on something so small as a phone like that and somebody's finger. So he had to construct a giant telephone. And yes, there is a picture, and I'll post it on the Instagram.
I love it.
You
with
can
all
see
my heart.
it's Hitchcock with the giant telephone.
And he's flipping the
and
camera
he's
off.
flipping the camera off. And people can, tell me that Hitchcock doesn't curse. And I'm like, well, I now have the evidence. Hitchcock flipping off the press. But it's that subtle flip off.
His middle finger's pointing right to the M.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm pointing at the M, but I'm really saying F, as in F you. Tell me I can't make 3D. I'll make 3D.
Love it.
But so the murder doesn't go planned. Ray Milland then goes, oh, darling, hello. So clearly this didn't work out. She's just like, come home. He says, don't touch anything. I'll be home. And he gets back, and he immediately starts trying to cover his tracks, amongst other things, taking a key out of Swan's pocket, the dead Swan, and placing the letter that Grace Kelly's character had received from Mark Halliday that confirms their infidelity, puts it in Swan's pockets, and basically sets his wife up for murder charges.
Yeah, which again I think speaks to how quickly Tony's able to speak or to think on his feet.
Mm-hmm.
Is that he comes back to his flat to find this plan did not go off.
Yeah.
And his response is, yeah, but I still may be able to make something out of this. I still may be able to get rid of my wife anyway.
Yeah.
And then starts to craft this other thing in the course of everything as it's happening.
Right.
There's no time to plan this.
Yeah. And so he's basically it's cover up time, and it's, as you said, he's smart. He leaves nothing to chance, to the point of just which, like, he sees what Swan was using for his instrument of murder, and much like you are, he's just like, that's fucking stupid. Like, this is too stretchy. But I mean, he doesn't say that, but I think he's looking at that, and he's a little, there's a tinge of confusion in his face that I like, but he figures it out, and he takes the other two nylons that are out of her sewing basket and places one underneath to set it up as if though she was planning to do something like this. And we cut then to the police being called. They come in to investigate, where we have that wonderful God's Eye of Hitchcock coming down to T that pushes a table mount off the table to reveal a second stocking, which is the reveal of our plant for Grace Kelly to be set up.
Mm-hmm.
We then cut to intermission, because you had to change the projectors in 3D. Even though most people probably saw this in 2D, so the intermission would have been crazy.
So, yeah, that's another interesting thing about, even though the film lengthwise didn't require an intermission, because the 3D process required two projectors to be going at once.
Yeah.
Typically, when you're projecting 35mm film, you would have reel 1 on one projector in the theater, and then reel 2 on the second,
and angled accordingly, so that you could change the reels for reel 3 or reel 4.
So when your cigarette burn timings happen, if you've ever seen Fight Club, that explains that, or the wonderful Masters of Horror film, cigarette burns.
Yeah, and Inglourious Basterds says it too.
Oh yes,
yeah.
So the reel changes are switching from projector to projector. Well, in 3D, you need both of those projectors to be firing at once. So you have to have an intermission so that you can change both of those reels at the same time.
Yeah. And it's a situation where, like, even House of Wax is a short movie too, even shorter than this one. It has an intermission, and it's actually much more a split down the middle. This one is much more the first two big instances, like it's actually broken up much like the play probably would be on stage.
Yes.
Like it is broken up at a logical point. So in a sense, it doesn't not work. It's weird for a movie this short because this movie's only about an hour 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So to see an intermission like that, but for getting the play experience, heck, I think we got the full Monty there. We can go out and have our cigarettes, drink our cognac. We're all set.
Yes. And on that intermission, I'm gonna take one myself.
Sergeant, look, it's the other stocking.
We are back from the intermission of the Shamley Silhouette. We are now here into the second half of our 3D episode. So put back on your 3D headphones and get ready. I'm joined back by Marshall Rosales. I am keeping this in here, by the way, because I think I will use that intermission music and it'll be so much fun.
Wonderful.
So we leave intermission. This was perfectly timed, by the way. God, this is perfect. We leave intermission and we are back, and it is the following day, and Tony's just like, well, okay, now let's get our story straight, babe. you don't know nothing. But he's basically just trying to warp her testimony so that when it eventually is so flimsily unfolded, it's just assumed that she did it. And, we're dealing with Tony just, trying to have control in every portion of this situation to the point where it's going to start. You can start to see it unwind for him, even though it feels like he could still get away with it. Like, you're still holding on to the notion of, like, maybe this will somehow work itself out. Like, the audience is kind of putting its own little denial spin the way Ray Milland is, because it's almost just like, well, you went this far. Maybe you can get away with it.
Right. Well, the kind of the rhythm of the film is very interesting because we have this wonderful long setup of we figure out who Tony is, who Margot is, who Mark is, and this sort of, what's going on with the infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tony invites Swan over, and we meet him, and we find out about this whole plot. And then the second the scissors go in Swan's back, we now no longer know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the film at that point takes the course of we don't get to hear an inner monologue from Tony to understand how he's going to put these things together every time something goes a little bit off or every time something gets changed. Mm-hmm. But so now we're on this roller coaster where the audience was almost in this position of being lulled into this place of comfort of like, okay, I know what's going to happen. Let's just see if it continues. Mm-hmm. And then when it goes completely the other direction, now we're strapped in and we're on this ride and we don't know where it's going.
And what's interesting is when he has a plan, he can talk a lot of shit, mm-hmm. and he can expout a lot of dialogue. When he has to make it up on the fly, suddenly some pure cinema kicks in, and suddenly we have to watch him in action without saying a damn word. The majority of the times that he has to change his plan, it is all silent. It is all in that pure cinema method that Hitchcock is such a big fan of. Thank you. But so we get to see his brain at work through the power of the camera lens.
Yeah.
And in that 3D way, we're in the room with him. We're scurrying around with him. Like, we are brought to his level of anxiety in a way that I don't think any 3D film after it has ever done. I talked about Hugo as being one of my favorites. Not even it has this level of anxiety. And there's anxious moments in that movie to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. But, and Avatar is an action movie that has a different type of anxiety. But, in terms of a drama or a murder mystery or something like that, 3D doesn't touch that anymore.
Yeah, I think that this really speaks to a wonderful use of 3D in a way that isn't spectacular.
Yeah.
Because the whole film takes place in this quaint little
London flat.
Yeah. And it's lamps and couches and end tables and that's what we're seeing and that's what we're exploring. Mm-hmm. But the 3D nature of it brings us onto that stage in a way that enhances the emotion and the dynamics going on between the players, and ultimately, like you said, the suspense and the thrills. Whereas I think most of the times people think, when they think of 3D, they think, oh, it's like sci-fi, superhero, big spectacle.
Yeah.
I'm going to see a lot of explosions and be in space or underwater or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessary.
No,
it's not necessary to have a transportation of the audience with 3D.
There's a logic. I mean, like this is maybe a little flimsy, but like I think about the Hateful Eight in times like this because of just it's one setting location. And it's the most recent example of like we're in one room. That would have been an interesting 3D movie. If nothing else, for the amount of blood that would have been flying off the walls, because Mr. Tarantino would have just like more, just spray it. But that's a film that could utilize that, and I thought about the one location as a good source for 3D because it allows the immersion to work better. I brought up Rope earlier as a possibility for that, and I stand by that in the respect that like the intention with Rope is to take a very similar situation where the audience is fully aware of something from moment one and has to live with that tension and that suspense and that drawn-out feel the entirety of the film.
So on that note, I think that in the recent past, the biggest missed opportunity for utilizing 3D in the perfect way, and I understand they couldn't have done it for budgetary reasons and all that kind of stuff, but was Hardcore Henry.
Yeah.
Is that I think that the GoPro first-person perspective of that film was really innovative. The one thing it was missing was this. If this was 3D, it would have been perfect.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I think that they were trying to even angle within, like, simulate the VR experience, but it's just like, yeah, but it's flat. So you're taking away the angle that could make it like the biggest selling point.
Yeah.
And it's a situation where I think it's difficult for those types of films to get that kind of technology put behind them because of the way the industry has changed in such a way. Mm-hmm. And frankly, the fact that Hitchcock even got to make a 3D film, given his experience with the genre that he usually tackles, is kind of a miracle in and of itself.
It is, but man, I'll tell you that when I first found out about Dial M for Murder being shot in 3D, I was just like, I'm done. I'm done with people being like putting 3D down and putting these gimmicks down, like being like, oh, I'm so sick of the reboots and the remakes. Guess who remade his own films? I'm so sick of 3D. It's just a gimmick. Guess who made 3D films or a 3D film? It's just like, shut up. Just like get off your high horse about what you think is beneath film, capital F film.
Marshall, this is Hitch. I want to thank you because I've been trying to tell people for years that we are trying to make the audience happy. And sometimes you redo things and sometimes you try new things because it's all make fucking believe. Thank you. Good night. All right, I'm back now. Hey, were you talking to a fat guy earlier?
I was.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. The idea, it's just like remakes the remake situation. We talk, if you by this time people have already heard our Man Who Knew Too Much episode, but like the idea of remaking his own property, that's probably the more audacious element. Is just like the filmmaker's going back to his own thing himself as the director, which doesn't always happen. Like Michael Haneke does it with Funny Games, but like with 3D, I mean, like that's somehow more understandable. But you're right, you can't put down these different elements of the way this industry works because they've been doing this since the start of this. The best version of the Maltese Falcon is a remake. It's the third remake. It's not even.
They're just tools.
Yeah.
They're tools and elements with which we tell stories.
Exactly.
And if they are used in a haphazard or amateur way, then they're going to come across haphazard and amateur.
And that's when that is when, like, I love a film snobbery of a sort to a degree, but that's when people who get too extreme about it can latch onto that and create a weird argument, an argument that I find very flimsy, but it somehow has a lot of prominence. So you're right. These things are not gimmicks so much as they are different tools to tell the different pieces of art that can exist in the world. It's just a matter, as you said, of how you're using it. And how Hitchcock uses this is fantastic. And it's complemented by the greatest detective in cinema history next to Sherlock Holmes and Daniel Craig, because I really liked Knives Out, guys. But no, we are introduced to John Williams. No, not that John Williams, guys. I'm speaking of the actor John Williams. He was a Hitchcock mainstay. He was on the Alfred Hitchcock Presents show. You'd know him as H.H. Hewley from To Catch a Thief, which we discussed on the first episode. Today he is Chief Inspector Hubbard.
And he introduces himself as a police officer.
As a police officer. But he is so much more. Because any time that Tony is trying to string Hubbard along, Hubbard says, "No, I ain't catching that fish," to use the fishing analogy. And he basically just pokes holes in everything. So you are watching a battle of wits between Tony and Hubbard that is, I think, fantastic to watch, because Hubbard never flinches, and neither does Tony. Tony, I don't see an instance in that scene, which is basically the second to last moment of the movie, where Tony even flinches. Like, he works on his feet and allows confusion to play in his favor, because it backs up his own disbelief at what's going on. And Margot's confusion only adds to the suspicion that she is the one behind killing Swan directly. So it's a game of emotion that's being played out. It's constructed with the meticulousness that only Hitchcock could have.
Yes. There's a sequence near the introduction of Chief Inspector Hubbard where Chief Inspector Hubbard hands his notebook to Mark to ask him to write his address down.
Right.
And we have this wonderful shot that goes in, pushes into the notebook that is like this moving insert, and then goes up to Hubbard's face, and we see Hubbard recognize the handwriting from Mark writing his address down from the letter that was found on the dead person, which was this love note from Mark to Margot. And we see that realization happen on his face, and then he, without skipping a beat, asks Tony to go check on something in the garden so that he can ask Mark, how long has this been going on between you and Margot, and does Tony know about it? And it's just this, and again, it's pure cinema. Yeah. No lines of dialogue are spoken, and we know exactly what is going on, and the acting from Williams is phenomenal, and it in this one tight little sequence, we go from recognizing Chief Inspector Hubbard as the antagonist to Tony to falling in love with him, of just being like, oh, this guy's smart, and he's like delicate with delicate issues, like he's sincere, because he doesn't have it all figured out yet. Yeah, but he's like, there's a lot of stuff going on right here, and it's a phenomenal little tiny moment.
Did you see the turn that happens? That kind of happens within that, when he sends Tony outside, and he kind of turns and just like, how long have you been having an affair? It's not like a flip of just like, all right, you fuckers, listen up. Like, it is, as you said, it's that delicate touch. He knows when to be sensitive to certain things, and
it's not a thing that he has any judgment about.
No.
He's there to solve a murder.
Oh yeah, he's completely objective in the of the situation.
It's just
there's no opinion going through.
Yeah,
it's an objectivity that you only see in the best detective performances. Like, which is why I know it sounded like a joke when I was comparing it to the other two, but like, if you were to compare Hubbard with a Holmes or a Poirot or anything like that, I think it stands just as fine as any other. Like, the fact that I don't have any like series of Hubbard books with his own mysteries is, frankly disappointing. But that it's because Williams plays him to a degree that it's an affability that I would want to watch more of that.
Oh, so much so.
And in a world where, we can make a movie out of anything, we can make a Cats movie. I want to see a Hubbard movie, and my response to anybody who tells me why is, why not? Because you seem to be trying everything else that isn't working.
Yeah. But that's Margot's perfect answer to, why did you go into that side of the table? Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, yes. Why would you stand? He is being serious, but it seems like the bitchiest question to come out of a policeman's mouth. Well, why would you stand right there? And it's like, well, why would I not stand right here?
What are you on about? Yeah.
What's your fucking deal? But he's asking questions like a good cop. But it's pretty clear that they're going to have to go down to the station, and Tony with his rich privilege nonsense goes, well, I'm going to call a lawyer because I've heard of cops planting evidence. And I was just like, oh, 2020. It's, if only these guys could see how the game has changed in their favor, they wouldn't be bitching as much.
Right.
But so they go to the police station, and then we get this shot of, which from a 3D point of view, anytime there's a single on somebody, it seems to really accentuate the character and not the background. I speak mainly in certain medium close-ups to close-ups, but there is an individual shot that's very much an artistic situation to speed us through the trial of Margot, because eventually it's assumed that she did it and she's kind of railroaded via the justice system. Mm-hmm. And it's a backdrop that goes from a lighter red to a darker red, and it kind of just starts getting a little bit more dire for her via the color coding. And
there are a few lighting cue changes on her face.
Yeah, well. and the shadows on her face change over, like it kind of goes over her the more dire it gets. And so it's a 3D shot that I think looks very interesting in 3D. Because it's not that it's flat, but it's the one moment where I feel like there's no depth, and yet I feel like it's adding something because she's popping out. Mm-hmm. Because she as a character is popping out.
Watching it the first time, and especially the second time, is I would love to pick Richard Donner's brain to know if that was an inspiration point for the three Kryptonians for their trial. And the floating heads and the guilty.
Yeah.
Just that sort of that presentation and the dark room and the floating heads is just like, it was very reminiscent of that.
Yeah.
And it being a trial and that particular delivery of guilty.
Yeah, exactly. You're right, actually. I need to rewatch Superman. But that's true.
Sorry, I never referenced what I was talking about.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because it is that, like, it's a blank space. And you have Zod and his buddies are pretty much just isolated in the black. They're consumed by black. And even in the following scenes, when Brando's going like, listen to me, the planet's going to explode. He is kind of like consumed in a black too. Mm-hmm. You're right. No, it's interesting and that's a technique that you still use in other films to this day. My only question is, did Hitchcock have a scene where he took off a cellophane S on something? Because that would be an interesting. I've never seen any evidence of it. If anybody's seen Alfred Hitchcock's Superman, let me know, because sounds kinky as fuck. Anyway, the trial happens. She's found guilty. She's going to be executed tomorrow. So clearly time has passed. Yes. It's either that or this is the most efficient death penalty system that London's ever had.
No, it's definitely been some time, because we hear from Mark that the trial's gone on and an appeal.
Yeah.
So this is a time later.
It's interesting from a modern perspective. We usually get a 6 months later, and here we kind of just naturally imply it. It's as if though we didn't need to be spoon-fed. Then, anyway... But Mark goes to visit Tony, and Tony's pretty much over it. He's moved his bed out to the living room. We see him bringing home a suitcase. When he hears that somebody's at the door, he hides that suitcase underneath a blanket. We start to see that
case.
His attaché case. You know what we notice right there from that moment on? Clearly, he thinks he's scot-free. He thinks he's got nothing to worry about. So he doesn't think he has to worry about saying anything. But what's interesting is that we've had this bomb under the table for so long of just like, we know he's guilty, when will anybody else find it out? And this is the moment where we start seeing how the pieces fit to how it'll be revealed in a satisfactory way that doesn't kill the kid on the bus, metaphorically speaking. Halliday tries to say, like, well, what if you lied for your wife and told the law that you were going to have her killed for her money? Immediately, he is able to use this as a line of, well, nobody would believe that nonsense. Can you see the wink that's going on?
Cling, cling, cling.
Yeah, exactly. So and it's more out of the desperation of just like, look, I know we want to help her, wink, but it's not going to happen, wink. And so we just got to move on with our lives, wink, wink. And so it feels like it's going to be a lost cause, but then the door rings again, and they don't know who it is. So Mark kicks it to the bedroom to hide, and it's Hubbard. Hubbard's back to follow up on some shady spending that's been going on around town, and that might have to do something with Tony. And over the course of everything, it's kind of revealed Tony's spending habits with the money that he was initially going to be paying Mr. Swan.
Yes.
And, you know, Hubbard thinks he's got all the information. He doesn't think he needs to really follow up on this. And then he turns around and accepts, oh, by the way, there's an attaché case missing. Were you missing an attaché case? And he goes, yes, I was. And Mark Halliday sees the attaché case in the bedroom that he's hiding in. He opens it up. There's 500 pounds in there, which is not what Tony has been saying. So then Mark just decides, well, fuck it, I'm not going to hide anymore. Here, I know this is what happened. They go through the whole plot, and still Tony is able to spin a web that could feasibly make him in the clear. And the only reason we know that that's not going to happen is because when Hubbard leaves, and then Tony leaves, Hubbard comes back. And it all comes back to our key, which has been our MacGuffin this entire time. The key that was taken off of Swan was the one that was basically taken into, was put back into Margot's purse.
Yep.
So that's the one that the cops have had. Hubbard uses this key to try to get in and tries to, you know, open the lock, and it's not the one that works. So, you know, he says, okay, well, I'm sorry to have bothered you with this, Tony. He puts it back in his coat. They have the same looking coats. He switches coats, takes back the one that has the key that works, gets in that door, and explains to Mark Halliday, look, I know the rich privileged fuck did it. I finally figured it out with my detective skills.
You just have to prove it.
So, and the finale, from the 3D point of view, we are kind of like allowed the most, I feel like it's the most camera movement because we are kind of moving from one end of the room to the other a lot more than we are in the other scenes. Sometimes we're going from one end of the room to the other. In this one, we're going room to room to room because we have to go to the window where the front door is. And it's the most that we're leaving the room within a single moment on screen. Because up until this point, the only time we really left this house or this flat is the gentleman's club or the social club where Ray Milland's hanging out in during what's supposed to be the murder.
Yes.
Outside of that, we're going from the inside of the house to sort of the exterior of the back where the back window is, and then outside of the door itself and looking outside.
Yeah, I mean,
the front.
The film is written as a stage play. It was originally a stage play. It was, I would be surprised if really much was changed, if there was even an adaptation, or if the script just was the stage play.
I think it's Frederick Knott's adapting his own play.
Right.
He is the screenwriter.
Right.
So.
But I mean, I would be surprised if there was actually any like adaptation.
No, I don't think so. I mean, like, you've seen the featurette too. And the featurette, Bogdanovich talked to Hitchcock about like what it is like to adapt a play. And he's just like, you shoot the play because that's what the people came to see was the play. If you change that, you've taken away their reason for going.
Right. And
which is fair.
There's only really two sequences where it is quote unquote opened up, where we get outside of the flat.
Yeah.
And one is at the boat when we see Mark arrive.
Yeah.
And the other is at the gentleman's club. Other than that, we're either in the front stoop of the apartment or the apartment. And
so what's happened is through the arrangement of Hubbard, Margot's released, because I guess it's that easy to get out of death row if you've got that kind of a hunch. But he's still got to prove that he did it with his little setup. So the the London equivalent of the district attorney was very trusting in the 50s to be like, all right, I'll let Grace, the suspected murderer, go out on the streets for free.
Mm-hmm.
But he's clearly testing out a theory, and then it's if not, then she's going back to the Huskow for electrocution. But so the way it plays out, you get to see these 3D shots, though, that are the quintessential combination of Hitchcock and 3D to a certain extent, because it not only uses the 3D, but it uses some good old Hitchcock process shots.
Well, it's interesting if watching it the second time is that the finale of the film when Hubbard is staring at the front bedroom window and announcing what is going on outside.
Yep.
Is the only place where the adaptation of the stage play stood out to me, other than it being one location, because it was so clear that in the stage play, we're not actually able to see the front stoop.
So we have to describe it.
So we need a narrator to describe, oh, this is what's going on, or this is who just arrived, and this is what he's doing, and oh, he's looking at this again.
And here's the thing, if you haven't watched the film prior to listening to this discussion, it is literally what Marshall is describing. He explains what anybody is doing outside. Actually, only Ray Milland. He doesn't do it with Margot. He doesn't describe Margot because he wants to make a little tiny surprise for Mark because he says like you're gonna be shocked for a minute.
Which doesn't play well for the film.
No,
because in the play, the surprise for Mark would be the surprise for the audience as well.
Exactly.
But because we've seen out the front of the window, because it's a film and not a play, the surprise is ruined for us.
And from directing a play versus directing a film, the final moments where Tony basically makes himself culpable in the crime would look better suspense-wise on the stage than it does on the film. However, I will say that even though he is saying stuff in his good old Hubbard fashion for his Hubbard novels that'll come later down the line and be turned into a cartoon series,
I think Hubbard novels are called Battlefield Earth. Or Mission Earth.
Oh,
right?
His first name was Elron, wasn't it? He was I just think of Dead Authors podcast. First commander of McDonald's. But the scene, though, where he is approaching the door and just the way it's edited and cut and he realizes, the key is still under the stairs. That's because Swan left it there, and that's how there have been 3 keys circulating. These MacGuffins are very involving. The tension is still drawn out, but it's not as effective as if he had taken out Hubbard talking. If we had made this another pure cinema sequence where we're just hanging on the edge of our seat, it would have been drawn out better. It's one of the few times where I can look at a Hitchcock scene and go, that seems like Hitchcock didn't do what Hitchcock would do, which is interesting.
Yeah. And a really fun exercise would be to actually just take that, and all you need to do is take out Mark's dialogue of what's going on.
Yep.
And then take out all of Hubbard's dialogue, and you don't have to edit the film much other than that. And just to see how the end plays would be kind of a fun experiment.
Exactly. And you want a lot of the dialogue in this movie because it is priceless. But that is a moment where it's not needed.
Yep.
What is needed is what happens when, to my mind, is when Tony enters the flat, and it's the gotcha moment. Talk about the ballsiest villain or murderer of all time. He's been caught, and he says, "Oh, I dare say I've been caught. Here, does anybody want some alcohol? Why don't we all just get drunk? Oh yeah, Hubbard, you're still on the job." And talk about the balls on Ray Milland to be of that character, to just be like, "Oh, I've been caught. Well, it's time to drink this whole bottle of whiskey because I'm fucked. I mean, a wife that I put through hell for several months. You want a drink? How about you, writer that I made feel crazy for a good hot minute?" Like, it's a great villain move.
It is, and I think that again, it speaks to this like fantastic complexity of Tony, of the character of Tony, in that he's not ever played as this like mustache twirling, like sinister psychopath.
He's slick. He's he's urbane. He's an urbane sophisticate.
But he is the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? The surrender at the end.
Yeah.
For me is a really kind of goes back and speaks to that idea of Tony Tony trying to come to terms with, or Tony running away from his life running out and from life not going the way that he thought it was going to based on either his athleticism or his intellect.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's tried to manufacture this other perfect life.
Yeah.
And it was through the manufacturing of this other perfect life that now he's actually going to be executed.
Yeah.
And his sort of just like, oh, I guess like that makes sense sort of approach to it is just very endearing, to have that coming from a villain and a guy that we just watched go through all of this stuff through the whole film.
It's weird. The moment he tries to be clever was the moment he'd be bringing upon his own downfall.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing to concede it that way. And you're right. It is a situation where here's a guy who was basically based out of athleticism and just kind of following what seems like a good order of situations, and then he's been fucked over too much. He's just like, what if I change it up, and what if I'm clever about shit? And then he's just suddenly just brought down by his own hubris, essentially, which is, a great story trope that transcends all ages.
Yes.
So he's brought down. He decides, time to get crunk, and Hubbard calls the police while combing his mustache. And that's the last frame of a Hitchcock 3D movie, other than the end title, which pops out at you in a very, I like that it's not so in your face 3D titles. I like, because House of Wax throws it in your face.
Yeah.
This one's kind of just like, no, they're just going to be right there. They're hovering around. Hey, in the opening one, I'll even make the M in the background so you can have a little fun with that, huh? Hitchcock's kind of lame when it comes to having fun with this, but here you go. So we have Dial M for Murder, a film that really, it's funny, it's seeing is believing with this film, because what we're describing could be any Hitchcock movie.
Zach, I was so excited for you to see this film in 3D.
Yeah.
Because I had not seen it before watching it in preparation for this podcast.
Yeah.
And I watched it and was absolutely blown away by just, it was very similar to my Avatar experience about just being like, this is actually a completely different film in 2D.
Yep.
It actually is a different film.
So you're telling me you have not seen it in 2D at all?
No.
Okay. I won't put you through that because you have the ability to watch it the proper way whenever you want. I don't. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it. The biggest issue that I have with the 2D version of this, which you can get on DVD, and even if you watch it in 2D, this is still a good movie. It's a good Hitchcock movie. The 3D makes it great because of what it's adding to an otherwise bland, what could be otherwise considered bland. Or just kind of like, it's there.
Yeah, if you have any experience watching previous adaptations of stage plays into film, the 2D version is maybe a 6 out of 10 version of that. It's very clearly, this is one stage play, and we're watching this one scene. What's the word I'm looking for?
It's
one
weird.
Location.
It's like telling me there's a version of Rope that's not a bunch of long takes.
Right.
That's kind of what it is.
Right.
That's what the 2D version of this movie is.
And it's like, yeah, you can also watch Wizard of Oz in black and white. That's a thing that you can do.
Wait, who the fuck's doing that, Marshall? And why do I have to hurt them?
People with their color tubes broken on their TVs.
Oh, I guess back in the old day, yeah.
But I mean,
that's got to be a lame existence, by the way, watching Wizard of Oz in black and white all the way through.
Yeah. I think that the film plays. It's a tight script.
Yeah.
It's really well written, and it works. It is something else. It is a different experience in 3D.
Exactly. And to tell you a little bit about what you experienced. Now, I saw the DVD copy. There is a Blu-ray copy that is 2D. You can find the 3D version available through Amazon. There are foreign versions, too, if you're having a hard time finding the U.S. release. Most things are multi-region at this point, so it's
all Warner Brothers Blu-rays are multi-region.
So there you go. So you already have that option. So then the 2D version on DVD at the very least, I watched it on my 4K TV, and that obviously is a little tainted to begin with, but I also put it on the computer. The biggest thing is that it seems like it's overly bright, or colors are being pushed out, and it loses some dimension that is deserved from that film.
Yeah, there's a new transfer done, I think, in 2013.
Yes, there was the one done in 2013. and there was a because it was shown in some UK cinemas during the summer of 2013. So there was a new version that got done, and Warner Brothers released their 3D version in 2012, their first one. But the biggest thing is that certain shots work well in 3D because of the way they were set up with that camera, amongst them of which is the shot of Swan approaching the house the night of the murder. When you watch it in the 2D print, his figure approaching is blending too much with a background that is crush black. In the 3D print that we watched, you can see his outline. You are clear that there are two figures in the frame. In the 2D version, it feels like they're melding way too much together, and it distracts. It's almost like it's a shot that couldn't be rescued in a restoration. So the technology with 3D at that time, the film stock is going to work differently than it's going to for a 2D process. This film was shot for 3D, but you can make a 2D print out of that.
Right, you would just use one of the
So
reels from the camera.
So you're automatically missing one of the elements when you have to just use when you're making the flat version.
And there was something I started to read on it, and then it got a little bit over my head in terms of the photo processing process.
Yeah.
But that anytime there was definitely anytime there was an optical done, so any fade to black or fade from one scene to another, and for some reason also with whatever process they used for this film, anytime there was also a projection, and it may have actually been not rear projection is probably what caused this.
Yeah.
Even in 1954 it looked like that.
Yeah.
It looked like the image is broken down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's the detail is gone. There seems to be like these weird halos as if they used a ton of noise reduction,
Right.
Or sharpening, and that's actually not what it was. Like I read that's actually the way that it looked in 1954 the first time, and that's just because of this particular way that they worked with opticals and the anytime that you're dealing with the backgrounds.
It's weird because I felt, and I'll take your word on that, because but when I was watching the 3D print today, that particular shot looked a lot clearer than it did, and I don't know if that's because I am seeing both of the elements at play, and not to mention the fact that it's not blowing out stuff.
Right.
It's very similar to how, this might not make a lot of sense, but Halloween had a couple different transfers done within the last couple of years.
Yes.
One of which was approved by one of them approved by Dean Cunday, where they changed the color a lot. Now I have the 4K version and the Blu-ray version. Blu-ray version is closer to what we grew up with, which is just, it's kind of like got an orange hue to it, and there's like colors pushing out. The 4K transfer is a much more naturalized process. So I'm wondering if it's just that because I have this DVD cut, that's the version I'm getting. Because what I saw today on this screen looks way more effective for what it's going for. And the lighting works well with it when it doesn't feel like things are just a little too overly lit in the 2D version. So, and it could also be because you're putting glasses on, you have an extra thing in front of your face too. So, but as we've talked about, it's not supposed to affect that completely. So,
yeah.
But at any rate, this film is released and it gets fine reception. This is from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and they reported the first audiences proved to be a jury that could not only make up its mind, but could make it up in a hurry. In exhibitor's own terms, Dial M literally died, and after just 4 performances on Wednesday, some long-distance telephoning to report complaints, increasing skimpiness of customers, a good many of them making no bones of their dissatisfaction, permission was given to throw away the glasses and hastily switch to the 2D version, whereupon business at the Randolph took a turn for the better. Ooh.
Ouch.
Damn it, Philly. You burn cold. You burn hard. So yeah, the 3D was not the main attraction. However, the film itself did get favorable reviews. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times, my favorite guy to love /hate / terrible. He said, "This is a technical triumph that Hitchcock has achieved."
It is one for which he needed good actors. He has them. And the best of the lot is John Williams, late of the stage play, who is the detective who solves the sinister ruse. So even Bosley Crowther, who I hate, knew that John Williams was our guy. He knew that we should have some Hubbard detective novels. He fucking knew it. And, you know, some people didn't like it. Richard Coe at the Washington Post said it's completely choice. And he had a field day with camera angles. And, you know, people are pretty much positive about this. But the bottom line is that it's not as successful as what would come later that year in the form of Rear Window. Wouldn't even touch it by comparison. And, frankly, it's sad to say this because I've had really a lot of fun talking about this film. Rear Window is a great movie. This one's just as good. It's just you've got to watch it a certain way. You have to do it. And I am not one to tell people, watch this in this format or you're unpatriotic to movies. But I will say that if you are wondering why this film isn't... If you're feeling like this film is missing something, try to find a way to watch this in 3D. And it's kind of hard because they don't really make 3D TVs anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's not like the people who listen to the show have the ready income available to have what you have with this setup. And I know that this was built up over a period of years, so this isn't an overnight thing. But, you know, if you find it at a cinema that is shown, for God's sake, seek it out.
Yep.
Because they do show this every so often in retrospectives. And if you're listening to this in LA, demand that one of your rep theaters show it, because you got like tons of them out there. I know the Grauman's out there. You guys can get that done. Amen. The Aero Theater, the Egyptian, get it fucking done. Yeah. So that I can fly out and watch it.
Yeah, I think that this is, I don't know. I have not seen this film in 2D, but I don't want to. But I feel like watching this film in 2D would be not dissimilar to watching Argento's Suspiria in black and white, or a Guillermo del Toro film in black and white. Just like the amount of work that he goes into storytelling, being a part of the color, and taking that element of the film away. Is like, is it still going to sound as great? Yes. Is it still going to be as crisp? Is the acting all still going to be there? Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely across the board.
Or even a Mad Max Fury Road. Like, I like the black and chrome edition, but the colors in that film are beautifully designed and just
Interesting
there.
That you bring that movie up.
Yeah.
That movie was also filmed in 3D. And if you have not seen it in 3D, you must.
And if you haven't seen Mad Max Fury Road, the fuck's your problem? At least watch it in flat. I don't care if you watch it in flat. Just watch it.
It's brilliant.
They go to one place and then they have to go back the way they came. It's great.
It's great. But yeah, it's
just also like watching The Mist in color. Which is a reverse because it was released in color, but it's supposed to be black and white.
Right.
You watch The Mist in black and white, the effect, Darabont's work is there. Mm-hmm. Watch it in color is kind of lame, but
yeah.
But so this film kind of dies a death 3D wise. It's revived in the 80s, and you know people like Marty Scorsese and Peter Bogdanovich get to see it. I mean, Bogdanovich saw it in its earlier release. But people get to re-see this, and they get to see what we're seeing today. So I'm just saying we're an extension of Martin Scorsese and Peter Bogdanovich, and I'm just saying get thicker glasses, and I'll get an ascot, and we'll make this happen. No, but this is a legacy of just passing on the knowledge of just like this, how this technology can work, and how it should be utilized. And you know, I don't think we've seen the end of 3D. I really don't think we have.
There's no reason to have.
Death is but a door. It'll be back.
That's it. Yeah. There's no reason to. And I have an interesting little quote.
Yeah.
This is a blurb from a Warner Brothers leaflet talking about 3D and what does 3D mean to Hollywood.
And this would have been their press release for the film Dial-In for Murder.
This actually was before Dial-In for Murder.
Promoting the technology at large.
Yeah, promoting the technology at large. So they talked to a star, Diana Lynn. They talked to a director, Mr. Hitchcock.
Yep.
And to a producer, one Alex Gottlieb. And here's what Mr. Hitchcock had to say about it. He says, as far as I'm concerned, there'll have to be a lot more changes when you're working with 3D. The close-up, for instance, will have to be scrapped completely. Can you imagine two normal-sized heads on that big screen? They'd look like monsters. In that respect, 3D will be more like a stage play. But when you're showing it But when you're showing a lot of people at once, 3D will be very effective. If the whole movie industry goes the way of 3D, there will be a lot more panoramic films and a lot less intimate stories. It will be marvelous, though, for tricks like squirting water out into the audience. And I think 3D will be best when a movie is planned around these tricks instead of trying to fit them into a movie. I'd like to have a movie start this way. The screen is dark, there is no sound. All of a sudden, a large hand with extra long fingers reaches out and takes the audience by the throat. Think that would frighten you?
Damn. He would have... Oh, Psycho would have been fun in 3D. Can you imagine? That would have been fun, having that knife coming at you.
We never would have seen it. That never would have made it by
no.
if that was in 3D.
Oh, yeah, no. They would have just been like, look, we were able to go with this as far as we could, but this is the line. Why not? It would be fun. They'll be terrified as fuck. Listen, no, come back. Let me tell you more. I think that's a great way, actually, to cap off this episode, is talking about what the potential of this technology can do, and how it shouldn't be overlooked. And, if you have the ability to see a 3D movie that was shot in 3D, and you can look up the information for upcoming releases, IMAX 3D, if it's certified IMAX 3D, generally I've been led to believe, like, if it's been certified by them, it was shot on that format, so it is true 3D. Whether it's used correctly is...
Conversion actually has come a very long way. And if a studio is willing to put the full 12-week conversion process into play in post-production and time their release for that, then it can be amazing. And the aforementioned Pacific Rim by Guillermo del Toro, he originally wanted to shoot that in 3D.
Yeah.
But because of the limitations of the technology and the size of the camera, he couldn't do what he wanted to do. And so he wanted to do a post-conversion, and he refused to do any 3D at all unless Warner Brothers signed off on committing to doing the full 12-week post-conversion, which they did, which is why that movie is flawless in 3D.
Coincidentally, this is also why they told me I could not make the sequel. So I made the Fish movie.
Yes.
I am Guillermo. I love Guillermo. He's an awesome teddy bear. I love him.
Yes.
But that's going to wrap it up for this Shamley silhouette, which is, proven to be a very eye-popping experience. Not a pun necessarily on what we've been discussing, but very eye-popping to people who don't think about 3D beyond the fact that it's a $3 surcharge on your movie ticket.
Yeah.
Which I think has been the biggest hurdle that 3D has had to overcome within the current era.
Right. Yeah, I think that there are some particular transformative experiences that I've had in 3D. I would say Ant-Man in 3D was particularly well done. Doctor Strange was done.
Yeah.
I think one of the hands down quintessential you must see in 3D films is Cave of Forgotten Dreams by Werner Herzog.
Oh, you mean my movie?
Yes.
I'm planning a post-conversion on Grizzly Man. And so then you cannot listen to the tape
Most
in 3D.
Most of us see life in 3D, so why not see movies in 3D?
By the way, watch The Mandalorian on Disney+. He's got to make money. He's got to go out there so he can go do more crazy docs that he's going to narrate and I'll love.
I'm all a fan.
Dude, Grizzly Man's... when we're done with Mike, I'll tell you my Grizzly Man story.
All right.
But that's going to be it for this week on Shamley Silhouette. Marshall, thank you again.
Zach,
we've got
nothing but a pleasure.
We've got one more for you, and it'll probably be the big finale. And for anybody who has been keeping up with the series, the release is going to be coming out as it possibly can because I'm trying to fit it in between a lot of things coming up in my schedule. But we are going to make this as consistent as we possibly can. You can check us out on realnerdspodcast.com, and you can look for the episodes that are coming out at the very least once a month, if not twice a month. The articles are going to take a bit of a sidestep because of things that have come up. I will promise to get those done at a certain point in a complete fashion, and maybe they'll reflect the changes that have been happening throughout the show too, and how my opinion on Hitchcock has evolved. Kind of the way that Clint Eastwood one did, where, I learned things about my love of Clint Eastwood that have limited that love. And then on the next episode, I believe I'm going to visit an old friend
to talk about something we've talked about before on the show, but in greater detail. You haven't heard this man on the Shamley Silhouette before, but when you hear his lovable big voice, you will just fall in love with him the way he fell in love. The way we all fell in love with him. You know who I'm talking about. We can't reveal it yet, but you know who I'm talking about.
And you will enjoy it thoroughly.
You will have some fun with this. But until then, this has been the Shamley Silhouette. Good night.